Okay, back to where we left off with Chanukah. Okay, so we learned basically the origin of Chanukah. On Chanukah, you're not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to make eulogies. Women have a custom of not doing work at the time the candles are lit. Okay, now, who's obligated in Chanukah candles? So yesterday we started talking men, women, and children over the age of 6. Already the minhag is that they should light their own menorahs. Now, the custom is that if there's men in the house and women, the men light and the women don't. There's a lot of reasons given in halacha for that, but this is the bottom line custom, that the men light the candles and the women don't. What happens if a woman lives alone or the husband's not home? So then she has an obligation to light Chanukah menorah. Like we said yesterday, she's equally obligated to do all the candle lightings and so on. Okay, a guest. Okay, now there's a very impractical case that a lot of people are unaware of, and it's a question in halacha, and that is, where am I supposed to light Chanukah candles? I'm supposed to light Chanukah candles primarily where I'm sleeping, not where I'm eating. So let's say I'm going to a Chanukah party during Chanukah. I'm going to somebody's house for a Chanukah party, but I'm coming home to sleep at night. So where do I light Chanukah candles? Do I light it in the person where I'm eating, or do I light it in the house where I'm sleeping? Now, halacha is you have to light it in the house where you're sleeping. So that poses a problem. One second. That could pose a problem a lot of times, because a lot of times the Chanukah parties are the time when you need to be lighting the menorah. And then if you're going to be eating, as we'll learn, you really shouldn't eat a whole meal before lighting Chanukah candles. So then there's a whole dilemma. What did you want?
Are you not supposed to light when everybody is awake? If you arrive late and everybody is sleeping?
Oh, we'll get there soon. Okay, now you asked the question, I'll answer it. If you live alone, even if you come home late, you light the candles with the bracha. If you have other family members and they're all sleeping, so halacha says you should wake up one of them or some of them, that they should be able to hear your bracha. In other words, if you're all by yourself, so anyway you light for yourself every night. But if there's a family, then you should wake up some of them. If you're coming home late at night, it's preferable to wake up one or two of them, that they should watch and listen to the menorah lighting. But a lot of times you have issues, I'm using the word husbands. Husbands come home late from work at night. They come home at 7, 8 o'clock. So technically, the family should not be eating a meal before Chanukah candles. So some places it says the mother should light for them and then the father will come home and light himself. Some people say if you have somebody reminding you to light Chanukah candles, then it doesn't matter, because we're afraid you might forget if you start a meal. But if you have somebody reminding you to light the Chanukah candles, it's not an issue. So generally speaking, if you're going to somebody's house for a Chanukah party, you should either go home first and light the candles and then go to the party, or have somebody remind you to light candles at the party, and then when you come home at night, you light the candles. But you really can't light it in the place just where you're eating. You have to light it actually, and this is a big problem because a lot of weddings are during Chanukah. A lot of people get married during Chanukah. So now the question is, where does the chassan and kala light Chanukah candles, and where do all the parents and the guests and all the relatives, what did they do with Chanukah candles? Can they light in the hall? The question is, you're not sleeping there. You're just eating there. So they write, ideally the chassan should light before he goes to the wedding, if it's already time to light. Or they should light after the wedding, when they go home to their apartment, wherever they're going to be sleeping, the chassan and kala, they should light there. A lot of people have a minhag, they light in the hall. Some poskim say it's okay, some people say it's not so good. But the bottom line is a person should really light the candles in the place they're sleeping. Now, what happens, this is also another very classic example, you have a dormitory. You have a dormitory building. So the Bachrim, or girls' seminary, it doesn't matter. They eat and sleep in the building. They eat in the dining room and then they sleep in the rooms upstairs. So where should they light? Do they light by their private rooms where they sleep, or do they light in the kitchen? So there are, it's the big argument in halacha. There are opinions that say you should light in the room, because that's your area where you're sleeping. In other poskim write you should light where you eat. We hold you should light where the bachim are lighting, where they're eating is where they should be lighting. For halachic reasons, and then there's a safety issue. You're going to have a bunch of yeshiva boys or girls lighting candles in the doorway of their dorm room. You have a fire hazard. God forbid the building can catch on fire and terrible things can happen. So therefore the yeshivas, generally speaking, do not allow the boys to light near the sleeping rooms. And by the way, then you come to another interesting point. If the yeshiva says you can't light there in the dorm room, and they do, it's very questionable if they're yetzer, because they're lighting not according to halacha. They're lighting against, the yeshiva who owns the room says you're not allowed to light there, so you're lighting with an aveda. If you're lighting with an aveda, you're not yetzer the mitzvah. You could make a bracha, it'll be a bracha in vain, plus you're not yetzer the mitzvah, and so on. But the fact is, our Chabad Rabbonim paskin that in a dormitory, or girls' dormitory, whatever it is, you light in the room, the dining room where you're eating, not in the area where you're sleeping. Because number one, usually, first of all, even if they let, that's not what we do, but they definitely are not going to allow it. Now, what is the best type of candles to use, or oil, wicks and things like that? So halachically, you can light candles, providing it lights for the proper amount of time. Okay? Now how long do the candles need to burn? According to halacha, the minimal amount of time they could burn is a half an hour after nightfall. Half an hour after nightfall. So let's say, for argument's sake, sundown is 4:30, 5 o'clock is, in most places, considered nightfall, so the candles have to burn at least until 5:30. That means if you lit the candles at 4 o'clock, they have to burn till 5:30. But if you lit them 5:15, they have to burn at least until 5:45. In other words, they have to burn at least minimally half an hour after nightfall, or half an hour from the time that you're lighting it. In our circles, we try to have the candle lit 5 whole minutes. But halachically, and this is a very big problem by Shabbos, by the way. When you have Shabbos Chanukah, so you have to light the Chanukah candles before the Shabbos candles. Now, the Shabbos candles you light 18 minutes before sundown. Then you have a half an hour from sundown to nightfall. That's already 48 minutes. Then you need another half an hour, which is 78 minutes, which is an hour and 18 minutes. Right? If you light right before candle lighting, like this Shabbos, candle lighting is going to be 4:33. Okay? So sundown would be 4:51. A half an hour would be 5:21. Another half an hour after that would have to burn until 10 to 6. Yeah? So then, if you have the regular Chanukah candles, they sell in the boxes of 44, those little boxes, there's no way they're going to burn an hour and X amount of time. It's just not going to happen. So what should a person do? Let's say they use the regular candles every night. For Shabbos, they're not allowed to use those candles because they're not going to be yetzer the mitzvah. So what they need to do is, if they're not using oil, they have to take a Shabbos candle, the Shabbos candles that burn longer, and at least one of the candles, not the Shabbos, at least one of the mandatory candles should be lit with a Shabbos candle, because then at least it's going to burn the proper amount of time. But if you're going to really light the candles, just light candles, it's not going to work, and you're not going to be yetzer the mitzvah, and then you're ending up making a bracha in vain. So people have to be very careful when it comes to Shabbos to light the candles for the proper amount of time. Now, where should the candles be lit? So many people in the world light it in a window. Why do you light it in the window? Because they want the people in the street to see the candles. Presuming Nisa. In the time of the Gemara says, where did they light the Chanukah candles? So the Gemara says, Mi Pesach Beisim B'chutz, which means as follows. We mentioned this not long ago. There used to be a street, public thoroughfare. Then there would be courtyards. So then you'd go into a gate of the courtyard. You went into the courtyard. And then in the courtyard, you have, let's say, 10 houses around in the courtyard. So in the time of the Gemara, before the Gemara, where did they light the Chanukah menorah? Not outside their houses. They lit it on the outside gate facing the street. That the people walking in the street should be able to see the candles and Persumei Nisa publicize the miracle of Chanukah. Then the Gemara says, what happens if you can't do that? B'shas Sakar, it was dangerous for the Jews to light candles. So then the din was, you did it on your table and it's enough. So basically, in a lot of places, like in our circles, and most of the Hasidic world, does not light Chanukah candles in the window. Most Furim Jews, a lot of them light the Chanukah candles in the window for publicity for the people walking in the street. But what happens, let's say you live in a completely Goyish neighborhood and no Jew is driving by. I mean, so what's the purpose of putting it in a window? Nobody's going to see it anyway. So you might as well light it inside that the family should see it. That's number one. Number two, the problem is, what happens if you're going to put it in the window, okay? Let's say you live in an apartment building on the 10th floor. Now the Gemara says, what's the maximum height of a menorah from the ground? From the ground, the Gemara says is 20 amma, which let's say for argument's sake is approximately, let's say 36 feet high. That's why all those big menorahs, the public menorahs that Chabad lights, none of them are more than 36 inches high, 36 feet high. Because the Gemara says, when you walk in the street and you don't pick up your head, how far up do you see? The Gemara says up to 20 cubits, up to 20 amas. A cubit is about 1.5 feet. So whatever, it's like plus a little bit more. So it's like 36 approximately, maybe less a little bit. So the problem is like this. You live on the 10th floor in a building. So let's say each story is, to make it easy, 10 feet. So you're going to be lighting the menorah in the window 100 feet up. So who's going to see the menorah in the street? Nobody's going to see it. So it's interesting. A guy from New York called me today. He lives in a neighborhood that there's only tall buildings. All the people live there in the high buildings. Right? It's called the projects, but over there it's not projects. It's just tall buildings. So the guy asked me, if I light on the 10th floor, the guy in the next building on the 10th floor will see it. And the guy on the 15th floor will see it. So is it worthwhile putting it in the window then? Okay? So I told him if that's the Metzias, they could put it in the window. But according to our custom, Chabad custom, we put the menorah not in the window. Because the primary Persumei Nisa, publication of the miracle today, is for the people in the house. So therefore our custom is, and the Gemara talks about this, we light it in a doorway, inside the house. Now you have to be careful with little kids around, they shouldn't knock it over, that stuff. But we light it in the doorway. So now the Gemara has an argument, the Gemara Shabbos, which side of the doorway do you light it? Now the mezuzah is on the right, and the left is empty. So one opinion says in the Gemara, you light it on the right, because then you have a mezuzah, and right is more important than left, that's why you put the mezuzah on the right, so we're going to light it on the right. The other opinion, the Gemara says, no, you light it on the left. Why do you light it on the left? because you have a mezuzah on the right and the menorah on the left, so you're surrounded with mitzvahs. And the Gemara rules that you put it on the left side of the door. But the poskim write, an interesting concept, we'll finish with this. Poskim write, what happens if you're in a place that there's no mezuzah? You rented an Airbnb for Chanukah. One second. There's no mezuzah, it's not yours, you're not there for 30 days. You're in an Airbnb that there's no mezuzah. So where do you put the Chanukah menorah? So the poskim write, you put it on the right, not on the left. The whole reason you put it on the left, the Gemara says, because you have a mezuzah on the right and menorah, so you're surrounded with mitzvahs, but they don't disagree to the fact that right is more important than left. So therefore the poskim write that's brought down in the halacha, that if there's no mezuzah, you light the menorah on the right side of the door.